I am here with comic book legend Len Wein. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
I want to ask you a question that I think you have an interesting perspective on that most comic book professionals wouldn't, and that is, when was the first time you ever came to WonderCon, and how much has it changed?
Wow, that's an interesting question, actually. Probably the first time, let's say 20 years ago, and I loved it. I mean, it was a much smaller convention. As Comic-Con proper started to grow like Topsy, you could still have an intimate conversation with somebody at WonderCon. It was in a hotel that also had a big bar and whatever area, and we'd all end up there in the evenings, sitting around talking, and it was great.
A bunch of people with tables and boxes of comics.
Well, no, it was mostly the pros. I mean, there would be fans involved too, but I get to sit around with a lot of my old friends and talk about the business.
Did you have like crazy lines of fans back then even?
Yeah, sadly so. But I don't mind. I mean, without them, I'd be doing something legitimate for a living, and I don't want that.
I think it's because I did a little research for this interview, and I saw that you have literally co-created almost every character in every comic book universe ever.
It seems that way, but not quite.
Oh.
No, but I've written virtually every character.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is there a character that you've never written that you want to?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. You're just like, I'm good.
Well, I actually told a story to someone else a little while ago. About 2 years ago, I came, when the first time I was down here in Anaheim, I came back to WonderCon, and one of the reasons I came was to meet Joe Hill, the novelist, son of Stephen King, because I've known Steve since we were both teenagers. And we became fast friends very quickly. And Joe and a number of his friends took my wife and I out to dinner. You know, we were sitting chatting, and Joe looked at me at one point and said, "Is there any character you've wanted to write that you've never had a chance to write?" And I said, 2 months ago somebody asked me that question, and the answer was no. I've written everybody. And since then I realized there is one character I've never written that I would have loved to have had a chance at.
Is that author Joe Hill?
Author Joe Hill, yes. The heart-shaped box and a number of other horns, a number of other stories. Now Nosferatu.
I'm kidding. Who is the real answer?
Well, the real answer was I said, yeah. Now I realize there is one character I would love to write, and he said, who? And I said, exactly.
Like Doctor Who?
Exactly.
Well done.
And the guys at the table with him all perked up and said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes, dead serious. I would love to write Doctor Who." And they said, "Well, we can make that happen. We're the editors of the Doctor Who comic book." So I did a Doctor Who story.
I had no idea. That's fast. That's great.
Yeah, now I can't think of anybody. I've never written for Archie and Company, and I don't think I could. I don't know how to write an Archie story, but I've written I've written a half dozen issues of The Simpsons. So I've written everything else.
You've written a lot. Yeah, you have your name in a lot of credits. Now you're also, I see you're wearing a Swamp Thing T-shirt.
Yeah, well, yes, I wear my resume at times.
I have to ask you, what do you feel about the legacy of Swamp Thing today? Like, how do you feel, since you were there from day one, how do you feel about where the character is now?
I actually like very much what they're doing with the current run. I was very impressed by Scott Snyder's work. I think Charles Soule's work is really good. So far, it's so good. I'm still reading the book, and that wasn't the case with the last incarnation. I read it through Alan's stuff and through Rick Veitch's stuff, and then by the next couple of people, I got bored and stopped reading it. And I'm still here this time.
What are your opinions on the movie?
I think the movie was made in earnest, which is a small town in South Carolina. Wes Craven had a budget of cab fare, basically, and did the best he could with what he had. And I was on the set for a couple of days. The only set I've ever been on where they said to me, "Watch where you step, there are water moccasins and crocodiles." I'm going, that's not any set I've ever been on before. But he really tried.
My final question for you, sir. Everybody asks it. I want to hear from you. You're a legend, co-creator of all these great characters. What's your advice to somebody that wants to get started in comic books, the beginning writer of comic books?
Wait till I retire. I don't need the competition.
And there you have it, Len Wein, right here, the advice that'll make your career. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.